you know what you want to do, figure out what you have to do, and figure out how to go right down the middle. If
Right.
you can do that, you will find a career as a content creator.
But I know, like a few years ago, I was in a boardroom meeting, and I'm leaving kind of companies and names out of it, but we, the group I was working with was really kind of nostalgic and excited about some of those 90s style action movies. And we had, a slate of a few ideas there. And that's what we wanted to do when we went into the room. But of course, what we were getting back at the table was, yeah, that's kind of out now. We want a female lead in that role, which I have no problem with. It's just, we were gunning for something that as a collective, we were running again on that nostalgia that people were kind of picking up on. But that's sort of what I'm talking about. There was kind of a mandate, if you will, maybe it's sort of a generally broad thing. It means that the focus was going to switching a lot of these characters to female leads, and a lot of people have done that. But then if you're someone who wants to kind of anchor it into a nostalgia bit, and people are like, that's not going to play right now because that there's something that kind of exudes, I don't know, toxic masculinity or what have you,
Sure.
that they don't want to kind of camp themselves behind at the moment. And that becomes kind of an industry heavy trend in a lot of cases. Is it more just a matter of, well, there's still people who are doing that stuff, you're just not talking to the right people? Or do you have to kind of adapt to the climate, even though you're not necessarily trying to you're not trying to play any particular political card? It's just, you've got that desire to make a retro 80s kind of deal, or a 90s action kind of flick with, a hardcore guy or whatever it happens to be. How much do you have to play that? Or does being an indie producer who really is hands-on with your work give you an opportunity to just find slots where those fit?
Your job as the producer is to find the graceful middle ground. You
Right.
know what you want to do, and hopefully you know what you have to do, and you have to find the middle ground, the graceful middle ground between those two.
Right.
That's the job of the producer. So you can apply that to politics or social agendas or whatever. Also, on a global scale, a lot of those things don't apply. A lot of the stuff going on in the United States right now is not happening in the rest of the world.
Right.
So, I'm still selling my movies all over the world. I only look at North America, meaning United States and Canada, as basically half my pie. I
Right.
still have a whole other half my pie that is not as concerned with those things.
Yeah.
But that's not to say like doing a badass action-led female-led action movie isn't going to resonate all over the world. Of course it is. But again, you know what you want to do, figure out what you have to do, and figure out how to go right down the middle. If
Right.
you can do that, you will find a career as a content creator.
Question I would have then is, and I think more and more because of the diversity of the landscape and how media can get out there, actors are realizing if they want to do more than just act, and they want to kind of embody the story that maybe inspired them to get into the business in the first place, or the type of story, and that was what inspired me. It wasn't just that I wanted to play a tomato in a salad commercial. If the job came up, it was, I saw characters and types of stories that really resonated, and I thought the way to live that life or be part of that story is to create it. And as I got into acting, I realized, oh, I might not just be automatically cast in the kinds of roles that inspired me. So I'm going to have to create it. So you write it, and yeah. So what does an actor do when they at least make that realization and start moving that direction? I guess they've got to go somewhere from there.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I think, every actor should, venture into content creation. I think they're missing a huge opportunity to advance themselves if they're not going out of the way to create their own content, whether as a writer, as a producer, as a, whatever. Again, we live in a time where everything's so tangible and cost efficient. You're losing out by not creating vehicles for yourself. On the other hand, I think there's more strategic ways to do it, in terms of like, if you are going to create a vehicle for yourself, there's ways to be strategic that it's going to give you a better shot. For example, I see projects all the time with relatively unknown talent, and they position themselves as the driving force, as the star. My personal opinion, I think that's the wrong way to go. I think a better opportunity is to develop something around a known entity or star and come up with a great supporting role for yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's way better to have a standout supporting role in something a lot of people are going to see than have a starring role in something that almost nobody's going to see. So that's one bit of advice I always give. But I think actors absolutely should be creating their own content. Whether it's a feature, short, web series, whatever it is, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Actors, like writers and directors and producers, we are all our own brand. We're our own corporation. We're our own entity. We're our own, we're our own brand. So, driving that brand and marketing that brand and figuring out ways to make that brand stand out. I mean, that's our job as creatives.
Yeah. And I've heard it kind of said both ways. This is, and actually after this, I'd like to ask a little bit more about how you do this in terms of groups, because I know you teach a lot of people this material for your programs, but without giving away maybe too much, the question I have then is it better to kind of enter into that process looking at it as, baby steps, so you do like you were saying, you focus on trying to find something you can develop at 30,000, then jump up to 60, jump up to 150,000, etc. Or as one producer once mentioned to me, and I don't think they were trying to lay out a strategy for an individual here. This was just something that they were saying because they've kind of approached it this way. Is that if the script is good and you've got something that's $1 million idea and you can pick up the phone and start pulling people together, don't delay your career by starting too far down and getting bogged down in a lot of those things. If you've got something that's great, put it forward, try and put the team together and get something done for 1.5 million or 1 million.
I mean, align yourself with, people who know what they're doing, always align yourself with people who are bigger than you, producers, directors, other actors, whatever, people who are going to elevate you. I say this a lot, especially to actors who are just starting out, who are a little bit more novice. It's like, I will tell you right now, the fast track to building a resume as an actor is go crew on independent films. Because if you crew on independent films, you're going to get two very big things out of it. First of all, you're going to learn about filmmaking and actually make a living in an environment that you already want to be in. Second of all, almost every independent film ends up casting their entire crew in the film at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, how many independent films have you been on where it's like, it's like, oh, I need some, it happens every single time.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're just starting out, you're trying to break into acting. Yes, audition. Yes, go chase down an agent or a manager. But you know what? Go work as a PA or a art department assistant, whatever. Because again, it's going to do nothing but add value to you as somebody in this business to learn all the different departments and the ins and outs of filmmaking. Maybe you even discover that there's something you're more passionate about. But again, you go work on independent sets, you are going to end up playing roles. Right. So, for actors, like don't go work at a restaurant, go PA on movies.
Yeah. I always used
to resume in doing that.
Yeah, because when I was coming up, the thing that I initially thought, which was wrong, and I started revising as I was advising, parents will sometimes approach me who've got kids who want to come into the business and they're in a small town. Initially, when I was young, I thought, well, you got to move to a big center. But I said one of the greatest places to be is somewhere it's got a little small film community, but it's not competitive. Right. And you can get in there and get a ton of experience. You can build a reel very quickly if you're selective about who you're choosing to work with, because there are good short filmmakers and not so good ones. But it gets you in the door much faster when you move to a bigger market. So from that standpoint, I see that.
It's true. I directed a movie in this little town in West Michigan years ago, and it's like, we brought our stars from LA, and then all of our day players we cast locally. And I mean, all these actors, they were for the most part all very professional. They all knew each other. They had all worked together before, because everything local they all end up in.
Yeah.
My partner Lewis, my producing partner, again, he's a very well-known actor. He starred in studio films and network shows. But he moved to Sofia, Bulgaria. He did a movie out there a few years ago, fell in love with it, and decided to relocate there. So he splits his time between LA and Sofia, Bulgaria. Well, guess what? Every time a big movie shows up in Sofia, and there's a lot of them, he ends up in the movie because he's a recognizable Hollywood actor living locally in there. That's how he ended up in the last Rambo movie, in the Doom sequel, in one of Liam Neeson's newest movies, Memories. Like, every time a big movie shows up, he ends up in the movie opposite, the big star, because he's already there.
Right.
So again, not telling people they should go move to some little market, but you're pointing that you don't have to be in LA or New York or San Francisco or Atlanta. Like, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, now everyone's doing, well, we're having a meeting right here on Zoom, and that's what's happening with auditions now a lot.
Yeah.
3 years ago, it wasn't even like that. I mean, I was going down to offices all the time. I enjoyed that, but and I miss it to some extent, but it is an advantage in terms of reaching out further into different markets to be part of an economy now where we're doing more of this as well.
Yeah. And you know what? When it comes to auditioning, I like looking at auditions online better than doing it in the room, because I can't tell you how often, people come in the room and they just don't know how to conduct themselves. They might have a great read, but, outside of action and cut, like people shoot themselves in the foot. So it's actually sometimes to your advantage.
Sure.
To
Yeah. I mean,
everything in this format.
yeah, actors can be weird.
Yeah,
I mean, in a good way. I mean, it's sometimes.
Yeah. I'm not trying to say that in a detrimental way, but I mean,
No,
there's been times where people come in and it's just like they don't know when to leave the room, or like just their own worst enemy.
yeah, yeah. And then, like you said, on the other side of the coin, this the part that I miss is that, I mean, I just like meeting people, and I always found that there's something that kind of grounds a distinction between who you are as a person and the character. If you do have that rapport with people, and you're playing a really bad guy, it's an interesting thing to see, I think, maybe from that side of the camera, where you go, oh, that guy that I really enjoyed that conversation with, he can be a really, big asshole when he needs to be in the scene,
Sure.
And so that's interesting too. But yeah, I mean, you win something and you lose something in each scenario, I guess.